There is something quietly profound about a glass of water. It is so ordinary that we rarely stop to question it, and yet it sustains every process that keeps us alive. We drink it without thinking. We carry it with us in bottles and cups. We are told to consume more of it, constantly, insistently. Drink 8 glasses a day, we hear. Stay hydrated. But beneath these familiar instructions lies a deeper question, one that is rarely examined with care. How much water does the human body actually need, and why? To explore this, we must move beyond habit and into biology. The human body is, in a very literal sense, a dynamic system of fluids. Roughly 60% of an adult body is composed of water, though this varies with age, sex, and body composition. This water is not sitting still. It is circulating, shifting, dissolving, transporting, regulating. It exists inside cells, outside cells, within blood, lymph, and interstitial spaces. It is the medium through which life expresses itself. Every heartbeat pushes a water-based solution through your arteries. Every neuron transmits signals in an environment stabilized by water. Every metabolic reaction, whether producing energy or building tissue, depends on water as a solvent and participant. Even your temperature, something you rarely think about unless you're uncomfortable, is tightly controlled through mechanisms like sweating and evaporation, all dependent on water. And yet, despite this central role, the body does not rely on rigid external rules to maintain hydration. It relies on something far more elegant: regulation. Inside your brain, a region called the hypothalamus constantly monitors the concentration of your blood. When this concentration increases, meaning there is relatively less water, the hypothalamus triggers thirst. At the same time, hormones, such as antidiuretic hormone, adjust how much water your kidneys retain or excrete. This system operates continuously, automatically, and with remarkable precision. This raises an important point. Thirst is not a failure signal. It is a regulatory signal. It is not something to avoid at all costs, but something to understand. And yet, modern advice often treats thirst as inadequate, as if the body cannot be trusted. This is where one of the most persistent hydration myths begins to take shape. The idea that everyone must drink a fixed number of glasses per day, often quoted as 8, has been repeated so often that it feels like a biological law. But when examined scientifically, it becomes clear that this number is not rooted in strong evidence. It likely originated from a generalized recommendation that included total water intake from all sources, including food. Over time, it was simplified into a rule about drinking plain water, detached from context. In reality, water needs are highly individual. They depend on body size, physical activity, climate, diet, and even health status. Someone working outdoors in high heat will lose water rapidly through sweat and require significantly more fluid than someone sitting in a cool office. A person consuming a diet rich in fruits and vegetables, foods that are themselves high in water, will obtain a substantial portion of their hydration from food alone. Even metabolic processes contribute. When your body breaks down carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, it produces a small amount of water internally. This metabolic water is not large in volume, but it is part of the total hydration picture. So the question shifts. It is no longer, how many glasses should I drink, but rather, how does my body signal its needs, and how do I respond? There is a subtle but important distinction here. Drinking water is not about chasing an external number. It is about maintaining internal balance. Consider what happens when the body becomes dehydrated. At a mild level, dehydration may manifest as thirst, dry mouth, or slight fatigue. As it progresses, cognitive function can be affected. Attention, memory, and mood begin to shift. Blood volume decreases, making the heart work harder to circulate oxygen and nutrients. Temperature regulation becomes less efficient, increasing the risk of overheating. But it is equally important to recognize the other extreme. Overhydration, though less commonly discussed, is a real physiological condition. When excessive amounts of water are consumed in a short period, it can dilute the sodium concentration in the blood, leading to a condition known as hyponatremia. Sodium is essential for nerve function and fluid balance, and when its levels drop too low, cells begin to swell. In severe cases, this can affect brain function and become life-threatening. This is not to create fear, but to restore balance in the conversation. Water is essential, but more is not always better. The body operates within ranges, not extremes. Another common belief is that clear urine is the ideal sign of hydration. While urine color can provide a rough indication, it is not a perfect metric. Very pale urine may indicate adequate hydration, but consistently colorless urine can suggest overhydration. On the other hand, darker urine can indicate concentration, but it can also be influenced by diet, supplements, or medications. The body is more complex than any single indicator. It communicates through patterns, not isolated signals. There is also a cultural dimension to hydration that deserves attention. In many modern environments, drinking water has become almost performative. Large bottles, timed reminders, tracking apps, these tools can be helpful, but they can also disconnect us from our internal awareness. We begin to drink because the clock tells us to, not because the body asks for it. This is where science meets réflexion. The human body evolved in environments where water was not always immediately available. It developed systems to conserve, regulate, and signal need with efficiency. Thirst is not an outdated mechanism. It is a refined one. However, there are nuances. Certain populations may not experience thirst as reliably. Older adults, for example, often have a diminished thirst response, which can increase the risk of dehydration. In such cases, conscious attention to fluid intake becomes more important. Similarly, during intense physical activity, thirst may lag behind fluid loss, making proactive hydration beneficial. So we begin to see a more accurate picture emerging. Hydration is not governed by a single rule, but by an interplay of biology, environment, and behavior. Even the type of fluid consumed matters. Water is the most direct and efficient means of hydration, but it is not the only source. Milk, herbal teas, and even moderate amounts of caffeinated beverages contribute to fluid intake. The idea that coffee or tea dehydrates the body is often overstated. While caffeine has a mild diuretic effect, the fluid content of these beverages generally outweighs this effect in habitual consumers. Food, too, plays a significant role. Fruits like watermelon and oranges, vegetables like cucumbers and lettuce, these are not just sources of vitamins and fiber, but also of water. In some diets, food can provide up to 20 to 30% of total daily water intake. So hydration is not just about what you drink, but about what you eat. There is also an interesting relationship between hydration and energy. People often report feeling more alert and focused when adequately hydrated, and there is scientific support for this. Even mild dehydration can influence cognitive performance and mood. But this does not mean that water is a substitute for sleep, nutrition, or overall health. It is one component of a larger system. This brings us to a deeper reflection. Why has hydration become such a prominent topic in health discussions? Part of the answer lies in its simplicity. Water is accessible, inexpensive, and universally relevant. It feels like something we can control easily. In a world where health advice can be complex and sometimes contradictory, drinking more water appears to be a safe, straightforward recommendation. But simplicity can sometimes lead to oversimplification. When we reduce hydration to a fixed number or a rigid rule, we lose sight of the body's inherent intelligence. There is a quiet sophistication in how the body manages water. The kidneys filter blood continuously, adjusting the concentration of urine based on need. Hormones respond to subtle changes in fluid balance. Cells regulate their internal environment with precision. All of this happens without conscious effort. To understand hydration, then, is not just to count glasses, but to appreciate this system. And perhaps there is a philosophical layer here as well. Water, in many ways, mirrors the nature of balance itself. Too little disrupts function. Too much overwhelms it. The optimal state is not fixed, but adaptive. So when you reach for a glass of water, it is worth pausing, not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet, attentive way. Are you thirsty? Are you responding to your body or to an external rule? Are you drinking out of habit or out of need? These questions are not meant to complicate a simple act, but to bring awareness to it. Because in that awareness, something shifts. Hydration becomes less about compliance and more about connection. It becomes a dialogue between you and your physiology. And in that dialogue, the body is not silent. It is speaking, constantly, through sensation, through feedback, through subtle changes in how you feel and function. The truth about drinking water, then, is not a number. It is not 8 glasses, or 10, or any fixed quantity. It is a dynamic process, shaped by context and guided by biology. It asks you to observe, to adjust, to trust, but also to understand when trust needs to be supported by knowledge. And perhaps that is the deeper lesson. Health is not found in rigid formulas, but in informed awareness. Water sustains life, but understanding how and why it does so brings us closer to sustaining ourselves with intention. So the next time you drink, consider not just the act, but the system it supports, the circulation, the temperature, the chemistry, the quiet equilibrium that allows you to think, to move, to exist. Because within that simple act lies a complex and beautiful truth. Your body already knows what it is doing. The question is whether you are willing to listen.